it spells disaster for me.
Yeah. I think really what it comes down to is you have a team that knows how to win and a team that has yet to figure out how to win under the new coach Deion Sanders. With a new college football season coming up, we decided to do a preview of this upcoming college football season. And first and foremost, what we're going to talk about is the new conference realignment. Bryce, do you what are your thoughts on these new teams coming into new conferences?
Definitely not a huge fan of it. But like I was telling you earlier, I think at the end of the day, I'm a big college football fan, so I'm gonna watch it. I am excited for possibly some of the new matchups, Oregon, Ohio State later in the season. That's exciting. Texas and Oklahoma in the different conferences. That being said, though, I do love the regions they had, the Pac-12, the Big 12, and kind of, the rivalries that were there. You saw a rivalry with Oklahoma State and Oklahoma disappear now, as Oklahoma State will not play Oklahoma anymore. And that kind of stuff is sad. That's sad for the fans. And that's what's kind of disappointing. I was hearing the other day, and it's so true. Each region kind of had their own style of football. And you kind of are going to see that kind of disappear. And, that's disappointing to me. But this is a new age of college football. Unfortunately, we're just going to have to deal with it for the time being. Um, and yeah, I guess we'll have to look forward to some better matchups. So,
Yeah, I think one of the best parts about college football was the regionality of it. And you bring up a great point. Each conference had their own style of football that was played that fans could expect to see on Saturdays. Like, Big Ten was grinded out, get a fullback in the backfield, run halfback power 50
yep.
times a game. Then you move down to the Big 12 and you see the air raid. Everybody's throwing the ball around. You see 5,000-yard passes everywhere, and you don't blink.
Yep.
And then, but like, and we've talked about this before on other pods. The regionality aspect of it, it isn't, it isn't in the best interest of the student athlete. So like when you talk about football specifically, you can work around it, right? Because you only play once a week. When you talk about, and I know this is a college football pod, and I've been pounding this pretty hard when we're talking about conference realignment. But when you look at other sports like softball, basketball, baseball, I mean, they'll play two, maybe three times a week, and you don't want the Washington baseball team having to go play a series at Rutgers, you know, and
Poor
and have
Rutgers is always getting picked on in this situation, but it's very
it's
true.
and it's just a result of now specifically now we're talking about the Big Ten, but it's they're the biggest culprit of it right now. I mean, we're seeing a day and age now where we're seeing really two power conferences. We talk about the Power Four after the Pac-12 dissolved and everything, but really it's almost a Power Two because you have the Big Ten now having what 16 teams going coast to coast.
18 actually.
18 teams going coast to coast, literally from Oregon, Washington, both USC, UCLA, all the way over to New Jersey with Rutgers and Maryland and every state in between has some Big Ten team, and that's
Yep.
just and not only is that's not in the best interest of the student athlete,
No.
but when you look at like the motives behind it, it's all money, and that really sucks to see the pageantry and the history and the tradition of all these conferences dissolve because a conference wanted to have a better TV deal, you know?
That's 100% what it's behind. And speaking on the basketball sense, Eric Musselman, the new head coach for USC basketball, they were contacting sleep doctors because they are that concerned about some of their, hiccups in their schedule where they're going to be at Rutgers, at Ohio State, then they got to go back to California to have a game. Stuff like that, where it's going to be like, ooh, like as a student athlete, that's like was never one, but I'm sure you could speak on it. That's going to be a mess when it comes to travel and just your play. So
Mhm. Yeah, and like the only time where I've had to travel a super long distance, it's happened twice. So we played University of Montana played at Indiana State a couple years ago. That was fine. That was okay. I mean, when you talk about student athlete travel, specifically football, they don't have to travel commercial. The school charters out a plane and everything, so it's a direct flight. Um, so it's shorter. You don't have to stop. You don't have to wait all the time in the airport. So we played at Indiana State, which wasn't a terrible trip. And then we played at JMU and on the East Coast back in 2021. And that was a long trip. I can't imagine doing that twice a week, and still expect to perform in the classroom, because that's always going to get hounded. That's going to be the focus for the NCAA, is to have student athlete excellence, not just athlete excellence. But I do believe that their mission statement is falling to the wayside according to all the decisions that have been made.
yeah, yeah. And we could have a whole different podcast slandering the NCAA, and I would um just simply with some of their different rulings with hardball and stuff like that, where they're a little uh two-faced when it comes to what they say and what they actually do. And this is another instance where they simply allowed this to happen, and they're going to be paying the price for it when it comes to affecting the
Yeah,
other student athletes. So
yeah. But like you said, we have to live with it, and we're going to talk about it. So
exactly.
when you look at the new conferences now, we have a ton of new teams and a ton of new conferences all over the place. Every conference has new teams that were added this offseason. Talking about the SEC, arguably had the two biggest additions in terms of excellence and history and parity and everything like that. Oklahoma and Texas are now in the SEC, and I think that makes for some discussion on who's going to come out on top in the SEC this year.
Yeah, yeah. I'm personally down on Texas this year. Their win totals at 10.5. They have a lot of losable games. They have Georgia. They have the Red River rivalry, which for some reason that is, regardless of how good or bad either team is, that's gonna be a good game. And
As is the case for most rivalry games.
yep, yep, it's always a great game. And Oklahoma's just as good this year. And then they're at Michigan, and then they finish at Texas A&M this year with a Mike Elko team that's probably going to be humming by the end of the year. And he's a great coach, coming over
Mhm.
from Duke. I just don't see Texas winning the SEC this first year. They're personally not my pick to win, especially with them removing the divisions. It's just going to be, I believe, the top two teams.
Mhm.
Um, not not in love with the Longhorns this year, which also we'll get to later. Not a reason why I'm going to pick Quinn Ewers for Heisman. So yeah, and then when it comes to Oklahoma, they have an insane schedule. They have Tennessee, Texas, Alabama, at LSU, and I just don't think that this is going to be a good year for Venables. They're a
Yeah.
good team. But they're going to have some bumps in the road, including the Red River rivalry. I didn't even throw
Mhm.
that one in there as I just spoke about it, but
Yeah.
those are all very tough games.
Yeah.
So there might
And
be a few hiccups there.
Yeah, and when you talk about just these stacked conferences now with all of the good teams, like we talked about, and really two conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten now, I think there is a lot of possibility of all those tough teams just beating up on each other. And you
Mhm.
might see like a 9-3 SEC champion at the end of the year, and then they end up going into the playoff. But people will look at their schedule and say, oh, they have now just the win-loss record. They'll say, oh, you have 3 losses. Why do you deserve a bye in the college football playoff? Well, it's because they played all the best teams,
Every best team out
every
there.
best team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I
Yeah.
think I think that'll be a discussion towards the end of the year where there's going to be some 2 or 3 lost team in the SEC, especially now that Georgia is still Georgia, obviously, but now Nick Saban is gone at Alabama. You add the likes of Texas and Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I'm a little weary on. They did lose their offensive coordinator, Jeff Levy. He's now the new head coach at Mississippi State. I love the system that he ran in Oklahoma. And like you said, I think Venables might have has a rocky road ahead of him, just in terms of scheduling, as does every other SEC coach, as does every other Big Ten coach.
Yep.
It's just a matter of how you're able to roll with those punches. Like, it doesn't matter if you win by 30, you just have to win by 1.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
and I
Yeah,
think
and when you think
that's going to
about
be a
it,
talking point.
you also have like with it not being divisions this year, you're gonna have teams with like the easier draws. So you're gonna have a Mizzou team that's kind of gonna be flying under the radar here, um, to possibly make the SEC championship, where they don't necessarily have that tough of a schedule, but they're a pretty good team that could kind of fight their way in there. And so a 9-3 Texas team could be left at home in the SEC, from the SEC championship
Yeah.
because of, certain scheduling.
So would it be fair that we both agree that Oklahoma and Texas are not winning the SEC this year? Can we agree
Horns.
on that? All right, moving on to the Big Ten. I think this is where it gets really interesting. Okay,
It is.
so obviously Michigan won the national championship last year. They lose everybody.
Whatever.
They lose Jim Harbaugh. I think Sharon Moore is going to do a really good job at Michigan. He obviously showed that he could take the reins of that program while Jim Harbaugh was dealing with his suspension. Right. At the same time, he had a great team that he was looking out of. He could jog 3 tight ends. He could jog 3 tight ends out with an elite O line and run the ball 50 times and have JJ McCarthy, who was a first-round pick this last spring, have him throw the ball less than 10 times and win a football game.
Yep.
So I think it'll be really interesting to see how they reload that roster. Obviously, we're not going to know until the first game. But I think Michigan losing so many pieces and then having the addition of Oregon specifically, I think they're a top title contender. And then you add, when you look at like USC and UCLA, I don't know I don't think they're going to fare very well in their first season in the Big Ten. One, I think it's going to be a stylistic challenge, especially when you look at USC with Lincoln Riley and his air raid variant on offense, and their struggles that they had on defense last year. I think the defense is going to be better. I think the offense is going to present some challenges to some Big Ten teams, but I think really the addition of Oregon in the Big Ten add some discussion on who's going to come out on top at the end of the year.
No, I completely agree. Washington's going to be down. Nobody really knows much about Washington this year, and they'll figure it out, but they have a tough schedule as well. UCLA, not high on them at all. USC, that's an interesting one with when they bring in UCLA's defensive coordinator to come over and play and do DC for USC. UCLA was very good defensively last year. And then they bring in North Dakota State's head coach Entz to coach the linebackers. They got some minds in there. So hopefully that might shore up USC's defense a little bit. I do know that they're at 7.5 over under wins for the year. They have a very tough schedule though. And then they're plus 400 to make the playoffs. That being said, if this is a team that can figure it out and hopefully, they get any resemblance of defense, that could be a sneaky playoff team. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. I think that, like you said, it's just they're going to need some time in the Big Ten. Now going to Oregon, I think Dan Lanning is built for the Big Ten. He, coming from Georgia in the SEC,
Yes.
not only that, his team is also built for the Big Ten. He's got a quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. they're going to be very good this year. They're my pick to win the Big Ten. I think that they beat Ohio State um, earlier in the year, and I wouldn't be shocked if they beat them again in the conference championship as well. Um, and just to bring up Michigan again, people have questions about their quarterback, and they do return a little bit, but I just don't see it for them this year. So,
Yeah, I think it'll end up being a three-man race between Oregon, Michigan, and Ohio State at the end of the year. Yeah, you still have to give Michigan props. They're the returning national champion. You're the king until you get knocked off,
yep,
so.
yep,
So I think, with that being said, I think Oregon has a really good chance of ended up being the Big Ten champion at the end of the year.
yep, I agree.
All right. Moving on to the Big 12. One big question: does Utah run the Big 12 now?
This is going to be, we were talking about this for years now, ever since, we heard this realignment. I know with our buddy Noah and you, this conference is going to be so much fun. Not
Mhm.
necessarily maybe.
This will be the most fun conference to watch in college football this year.
Yes. When it comes to who's going to win it, I could tell you probably 8 teams. Um, I'm, I wish I could say, look at you confidently and say Utah's going to win it. I don't know. Like, I would say the better bet would be them to make the playoffs with,
Yeah.
Cam Rising. We'll get into that later. But there's teams like K-State, Kleinman, former North Dakota State guy. They play tough brand of football there. They just got a new OC as well. They got Avery Johnson at quarterback. He's the Pop-Tarts Bowl MVP. And he's a good quarterback. He's also up
Yeah.
there in the Heisman odds as well. They got Oklahoma State. Ollie Gordon, Gundy, they're always going to be a 9 or 10 win team and competing. Like,
Yes.
you can set them down at the beginning of the year, pick them back up in November, and Gundy's going to be, 9 wins, like,
Yeah.
regardless.
Uh-huh.
And then I have 2 teams of UCF and Iowa State as sleepers. Iowa State, they have a tougher schedule. They're at Kansas, Utah, and West Virginia, but they're home against K-State and UCF. They were young last year. They returned 10 on offense and 9 on defense. They were in a bunch of one-score games last year, and I can only see more improvement from this team. And they got a pretty decent coach in Campbell.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I'm a huge fan of Coach Campbell over at Iowa State. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't keep up with Iowa State football a ton, especially in the last few years as I've been playing myself,
yeah,
but I've always been a huge fan of him because he seems like, when you look at the style of coaches in college football, you'll have the guys like Chip Kelly, who are the tacticians, and the Dabo Sweeneys, who are like the recruiters of the world. Then you have like Coach Campbell, who just seemed like true nose to the floor motivators
yeah,
of guys. I
yeah.
really, and I don't know why they haven't been as successful as they have been the last few years. But I really like Coach Campbell. And for his sake, I hope Iowa State does well, because I don't want to see him out of the job at the end of the season, but UCF is really interesting to me. We'll talk about KJ Jefferson later on, specifically for my pick in the dark horse Heisman race. But I think the Big 12 is going to be the most fun brand of football to watch.
I could not agree more. And going back to UCF, they have an easy schedule, and they're tough. They're tough games they have at home. They have Arizona and Utah at home. They just have to go to Iowa State and West Virginia. They're 39-5 in the bounce house. They're good. When you get
Awesome name for a stadium, by the way.
yes, they're good, and they're a team loaded with transfers, and they got KJ Jefferson leading charge for the Knights. I Another sneaky team. I know a lot of people are going to wonder why we didn't bring up Kansas. I have issues with the health of Daniels, and also I don't know if a lot of people know this. They're not playing at their home stadium this year. Their non-conference games are at a soccer stadium, and all their home conference games are going to be at Arrowhead. Now, you could probably speak more to this, but I think going on the road and then having to travel even more for a home game, um, throws off someone's routine even more.
Absolutely.
So
I think towards the middle of the season, middle to late of the season, they'll be in a routine at that point. The hard part is going to be getting into the routine at the beginning of the season until that
yep,
point, because when like the big thing about home games is it's just one less thing that you have to worry about. When you're a player and a coach, you have to think about so many different variables that go into what turns into a game day, right? When you're at home, you know where your locker is, you know where everything is, you know where you can warm up, what snacks are going to be available, the equipment room, you know exactly where you need to be, how your uniform is going to hang out. It's just one less thing that you have to worry about. When you go on the road, you don't have that. I mean, I've been stuck into some really crappy locker rooms in my career, and not having, and I'm not, playing at Arrowhead. I mean, they're gonna have their facilities are gonna be just fine, but they're not. Kansas will not be practicing at Arrowhead. It's so that'll be an interesting thing for that team to deal with. I think, like I said, towards the middle of the season, towards the end of the season, they'll get into a groove. They'll be comfortable with how everything is going to go. It's just getting to that point.
yeah, and I wonder how Coach Leipold is going to be able to rally the troops. I don't have their schedule off the top of my head. I do know they play UNLV early though, and UNLV is another sneaky group of five team that could cause some noise.
Mhm.
Especially when you're playing in a soccer stadium, in a new environment, I can only imagine what that could cause. So
Yeah, I'm pulling up their schedule right now, and let's see what we got.
A few moments later.
They start off with a home game at Lindenwood, and then they're at Illinois. Illinois could be interesting. They have that matchup with UNLV. Their only preseason ranked matchup is against Kansas State in October.
okay,
They play at Arizona State. They play at West Virginia. TCU comes to them. They play at BYU, at Baylor. So the schedule isn't terrible.
it isn't bad.
It
No.
isn't bad. With that being said, all the extracurricular factors that go along with that, with them rebuilding their stadium, is going to be
And then with
interesting.
Daniels' health as well, because he's not been able to stay healthy
Yes,
at QB. And when he plays, he's very good. And if he is fully healthy, this is a like winnable, like they could compete, but he's just not shown that he can stay healthy, unfortunately.
absolutely, absolutely. And
So
I think it's fair to say that neither of us have the utmost confidence in any one of these teams
no,
coming out on top at the end of the season. So we'll just leave it at that. I suppose. Okay, so moving on. This is the first year of the 12-team college football playoff. We've alluded to it throughout the entire episode so far. We have moved into the era of the Power Four with the SEC, the Big Ten, Big 12, and ACC. Right? We are now coast to coast with multiple really good teams in each conference. Right? So there was a question that got brought up a while ago that I think is an interesting argument. With so much realignment occurring, with so many really good teams into four conferences, there's a consolidation of power among those conferences. There was an idea that was brought up to where there should be a college football playoff for the Power Four, and then a college football playoff for the Group of Five. I think that gets into some really sketchy territory when you talk about the subdivisions and Division I football, because now, like all the teams that we've been talking about, they're FBS, the football bowl subdivision, right? And the bowl subdivision doesn't even really make sense anymore. We are now in the era of the college football playoff. We've been in it for 10 years now. Then you look at the FCS with the likes of, the brand name FCS teams that everyone's going to know: Montana, NDSU, SDSU, Montana State, all those guys. Those are the football championship subdivision. They have been in the playoff for decades now.
Yep.
I believe the entire time the FCS, even back when it was called 1AA, I think they've been in the playoff.
Yeah.
So I think if you change the structure of the college football playoff into a Power 4 college football playoff and a Group of 5 football playoff, I think you start flirting with the idea that we split into 3 subdivisions in division football. What are your thoughts on that?
And I could not agree more. And I think if there was a Group of 5 playoff, it would allure schools like North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Montana, and the neighbors to come up. And that's exactly what I think would draw them up. Right now, I don't see. I think North Dakota State's plenty happy where they're at. And I'll just pick on North Dakota State right now. I don't think that they want to go up right now because for the longest time they had no like, who wants to go 7-6 and go play in some worthless bowl. 12 teams now does open that up, but even like we're gonna get into it. I really think that there's going to be one team this year that makes it, and it's going to be the auto bid that they're forced to put in from the Group of 5.
Yes.
And until Notre Dame joins a conference, which I don't think is coming anytime soon, they're also going to have a spot there because they're a good team this year as well, and they're going to slide right in there. So that's going to take away from possibly another Group of 5 team. Like you said, it does get into sketchy territory where, and this enters a broader conversation of like even the parity in the FCS, where this year you can even see it where there are 4 main teams with Montana, Montana State, NDSU, SDSU, and you'll have a few like that's tier 1, kind of have tier 2, and then tier 3 kind of becomes pretty rough. And you're starting to see like Sam Houston State, they were very good for so long in the FCS. They jumped up. They've been having they had some decent success last year. Kennesaw State, I don't understand it, but they saw the reason to jump up. They jumped up as well. And even next year, you're going to have Delaware and Missouri State. So, I don't know if that's writing on the wall that maybe that there is going to be a Group of 5 playoff here coming soon.
I
But
think that's oh, go ahead and finish it. Don't mean to interrupt.
I don't think that, I don't think that's, I think there should be some adjustments made to the Group of 5, especially with some of those teams that jumped up, and kind of reshuffling some of them. But once again, I don't know the answer to that. I think it's very intricate and there's a lot of moving pieces here.
Yeah. And I think if we do end up going into a Power 4 and then a Group of 5 college football playoff, we will see that split.
Yeah.
I think we will see that split. Another alternative that we talked about was something equivalent to what college basketball does with the NIT. Those unfamiliar with the NIT, it's the non-invitational tournament. It's all the basketball teams that weren't invited to March Madness that can go play, and they play for the NIT, which is the pseudo championship for those who weren't invited, right? So I think that could also be interesting. And it's right there. It's flirting right there with the Group of 5 college football playoff. But I think in terms of branding and logistics, I think the NIT version of it would make more sense for on the NCAA's side, because they don't want the hassle of creating that larger divide between group of 5 and Power 4. So I think that NIT model might actually make a lot more sense. And it would be full. It would be full of Group of 5 teams. It would be full of Group of 5 teams with a little sprinkle of the middle of the pack Power 4.
And you can offer the same teams, do it the same way as the 12 team, get them a home playoff game. Offer the higher seeds a home playoff game. Get the fans in there. You all of a sudden got interest. I mean, you see a lot of these bowl games. They'll pan to the bowl games like the Frisco Bowl, and there's 25 people there, and then you see the next week in the national championship, that thing's packed for the FCS, that thing's packed to the brim. So obviously, like the bowl system's a little outdated. So, let's update it a little bit. And you can even call it like the Pop Tarts Bowl or, the Frisco Bowl at.
It's exactly what the college football playoff does. I mean, you still go play, you still go play the Cotton Bowl. You're still Cotton Bowl chance, but it's the
Exactly.
semifinal, you
Yeah.
know?
They could rebrand it, and the winner could be, the winner, I'm Pop Tart Bowl's been the most famous one recently, but
Yeah,
the NFP could be the pop, whatever their main sponsor is, could be
yeah.
you're that winner of that bowl along with being the NIT champion.
Mhm. And I
So,
think, I think the only reason that they're gonna keep these bowls alive as soon as possible is the same reason that we talked about the whole conference realignment fiasco, and it's money. You know,
yep,
I mean, when Barstool Sports is offering millions of dollars to go be a sponsor and put on their own bowl game, you go take that deal
yep. Oh,
normally,
with yep,
but so I think that is why they will keep the bowls in place for as long as possible, because it's just another form of revenue. But I think that next evolution is doing something like the NIT, because it gives teams something to play for,
yep.
and it doesn't, like, when you're a 6-6 team rolling into the playoff, or not the playoff, but a bowl game, like that bowl game might mean a little something to you, because say Kennesaw State goes 6-6. I don't even know if they're eligible for a bowl game this year,
I don't think
because
they
they're,
are. They might.
but
I don't
say,
know.
say like the likes of like Kennesaw State or Sam Houston, better example. Say Sam Houston goes 6-6 this year, and they have a chance to go to a bowl game, and they have the opportunity to win the first bowl game in history of Sam Houston State. I mean, that's a big deal for schools like that. But when we saw it last year, when you're Florida State and you're undefeated and you don't
They
get
don't
invited to the
care.
college football playoff and you go to a bowl game, they don't care. They lost by 60, legitimately lost by 60. They
They
don't
literally
care.
could have cared less the entire time. And it's terrible. Like I know it comes to TV deals, it's terrible for the viewers, it's terrible for the audience. I like give them a home playoff game. You can do
Yes,
the same system. You can do a neutral site. There's plenty of stadiums across the
yes.
country.
Yeah, just give them,
Or they can figure it
just
out.
give these teams something to play for.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, I mean,
Yep. And
that
I
that
feel
that 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 adds a little something extra on the players and coaches side, because
yeah.
you have the opportunity to play for a championship, whatever you want to call this NIT version.
Yeah.
You get the opportunity to play for a championship, and you don't have to worry about going to some podunk bowl game that nobody's gonna want to watch.
But not
So say this NIT in college football happens, who do you think would be those? Let's take it back. Go to the 12-team college football playoff, the normal one, the one that actually exists.
yeah.
Who do you think in the group of five do you think can contend for a spot or two in that?
So my favorite and right now is Liberty. You look at their schedule, they have App State and that is it. Um, they're a loaded team with an easy schedule. They're gonna have their only knock is gonna be how they performed against Oregon last year in their bowl game, and I do believe that that's gonna play a factor in the college football committee's decision making when it comes to these group of five teams. Um, but they're very good, and Conference USA is not good this year, and they should run away with it. Um, the other teams I have, Boise State, um, they could run away with the Mountain West, but that's another conference that's gonna like it came down to three different teams and practically a coin flip. Like they had to go to the old BCS model to decide which two teams were gonna be in their championship last year. Um, they have Oregon on their schedule. So if they get beat down by Oregon early in the season, I don't see it happening for them. They could win out, they could win the Mountain West. I just don't see, say if Liberty goes undefeated and there's a one-loss Boise State team that just got beat down to Oregon, don't see it happening. Memphis has Florida State. That's another same situation as Boise. If they get beat down, I think that's good night to their playoff hopes. you got to be competitive in these games, I believe. Um, and I think it'll become from, the group of five will come from the Mountain West. It'll be Liberty or it'll be the Sun Belt champ. So the Sun Belt champ, App State, Texas State. I love JMU as a sneaky team to sneak in and win the Sun Belt this year. That being said, there's no promise that they're going to have a good enough record. And same with like a UNLV team. They're very good. They have a good returning wide receiver in Ricky White. They get Matthew Saluka from Holy Cross. And I'm blanking on their other quarterback. They got a good quarterback room. They're going to be a good team this year, but the Mountain West could just be another conference that beats the tar out of each other on the top.
I want to, you talk about Mountain West. I want to see so bad to see a team like Air Force just go on the run that they did last year. Now they started what, like 7-0, 8-0.
Then they got, yeah,
and
they
then
got,
they lost 4 of their last 5 games or something like that. I want to see Air Force, Army, Navy just go on runs. It's not gonna happen, but I want to see them go on runs, and I want to see an academy go to the playoff, man. I
and this
want to
could be
see
the
that.
way that they get back into like a national championship, or if these
Yes.
academies do get this group of five. That being said, though, like these teams are going to have to play perfect, and it's going to be a team that's undefeated, and even Liberty might get a knock against them with how they played against Oregon in that bowl game last year because they were non-existent. And they returned pretty much everybody from that bowl game.
Mhm.
So I don't know who some of your favorites are, if you have anybody off the top of your head, but
No, I mean, you did a really good job of explaining all of every group of 5 team that I think even has a sliver of a chance to jump in to the playoff. But like I said, I want to see so badly an
an
academy go to the playoff. I want to see Air Force run for 700 yards against some SEC team. I would be so happy. It'll never happen. It's not gonna happen. I want to see it. I want to see it so bad. Okay, moving on. All right, let's get into some Heisman talk here. All right, we're gonna start off with our dark horse candidates.
Love it.
Okay, we're gonna save the favorite. We're gonna save the favorites later.
Yeah, it's boring. Favorites
Yeah, that's boring. Nobody wants to hear about the Heisman favorites. I want to hear.
No.
I want to hear Bryce Harrington's dark horse Heisman pick.
I love Nico Amaval. I brutalize his name. Nico from Tennessee, the quarterback.
Imalava, I think it is.
Good. Yeah, you hit
Maybe.
it. You did hit it there. I think you hit it there. I have notes. If there's such thing as a Jaden Daniels 2.0 as a Heisman winner, he's the guy. He is perfect for this Rocky Top system on offense. And he can put up incredible numbers. He's got an incredible arm, dual threat. His defense will be a big issue for him this year. They lose a lot. Tennessee loses a lot on defense, and they're in the SEC, so it's going to be tough. But that being said, if he's even remotely good and can put up those numbers in the SEC and do what Jaden Daniels did, a 9-3, 10-2 record with really good numbers, I think that he's sneaky good to win that.
I think he could be almost. I think both of our picks actually. I think it could be kind of like a Lamar Jackson situation where his team has just enough success to have some national relevance, especially with the 12-team college football playoff in place now. I think Tennessee on offense is just going to be really good. They're always going to be really good with Josh Heupel running the show there. And you look at their bowl game at the end of the year last year. That was Nico's first start in his career
against a good Iowa defense, like
against an elite Iowa defense.
Yeah, that's it. That's good. Everyone, we can talk bad about Iowa on the offense, but their defense is elite. Yeah, I love Nico. He's plus 1,400 for the bettors out there in the Heisman market. Why not? So
yeah. And on defense, they do have James Pierce. I know one person doesn't make a defense.
no,
but if he can be a game wrecker, like everyone believes he can be, then I think Rocky Top might be playing a lot
And Tennessee's
this
just a
season.
big enough brand that if they start getting on a roll and Nico's playing well, that's where, that's where Heisman's can
Yeah.
grow from. So,
Mhm.
and I'll bump it back to you, AJ. Who's your dark horse?
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to it already. My dark horse candidate is KJ Jefferson. KJ Jefferson transferred from the University of Arkansas this offseason to UCF with Gus Malzahn, right? KJ Jefferson is a sixth-year senior. He has only been a starter for the last 3 seasons. Going into his sixth year, he has 10,000 total yards of offense and 88 total touchdowns.
Yep.
He is a physical freak of nature. He is 6'3". He is 245. And I know this is low-hanging fruit on this, but when you see a physical freak of nature at quarterback for a Gus Malzahn team, all you can think about is Cam Newton and what Gus Malzahn was able to do with a guy like that. Who was the quarterback for Auburn back in 2014? Nick Marshall. Nick Marshall.
Thank you.
So Nick Marshall is a different flavor of dual threat quarterback. He was more get him out in space, electric in the open field kind of runner, right? Adequate passer. I think he actually went to the total sidetrack here. I think he went to the Canadian League and played corner. Super good at. So he was a super good athlete, but he is different than what I think Gus Malzahn wants in his quarterback. Last year he had UCF had John Reese Plumlee, who had transferred a couple years ago from Ole Miss. He was more of an athlete playing quarterback, right? I mean, you look at his highlights. His highlights are some sweet stuff. I think he had 15 touchdown passes, 8 interceptions last year. He got hurt, so his running ability was a little suspect at the end of the year, which is understandable. But then you put in this guy, KJ Jefferson, who's an absolute freak of nature, and you put him as a quarterback, and you run kind of a Cam Newton model, where you basically turn into a single wing team. I think, and like we talked about, UCF has a very favorable schedule this year, and all of their tough games are at home.
And Gus Malzahn is a good coach.
And he's a good coach. And you can look at their record last year. I think they were under 500. I think they were 6-7 last year. I mean, you can look at the quarterback situation.
I mean, they were 6-7. They had a close loss to Texas Tech, 23-24. They got beat down in a few games, but
I think part of that is because
35-36. I mean, they're 1 point, they're 2 1-point games away from being over 500.
Exactly. And I think part of the struggles, I think it was toward the middle of the season when John Reese Plumlee was injured. Part of it was the whole QB situation. When you have a 6th-year senior who his deal is being able to run the ball. And he's a good passer. Like when you compare those two, the past 2 UCF quarterbacks, it's going to be John Reese Plumlee, who is more of an athlete playing quarterback, and then you have KJ Jefferson, who is a quarterback who is an athlete. I think that is the difference maker for UCF this season. And if I look down at my laptop in November and I see KJ Jefferson has 20 rushing touchdowns on the season, I would be surprised if he goes. Like if he has let's call it like a 30 passing touchdown, 15 rushing touchdown season, I think he's going to be in New York at the end of the year.
I wouldn't doubt it, especially like I said, with their schedule. I was telling you guys earlier how much I love UCF to possibly win the Big 12. Like they're going to be in there competing. So,
if you want to know anything about what KJ Jefferson is, just go look up the Nick Saban quote.
This is not the kind of team that you all think they are. They're a good team, and that quarterback is a handful. I mean, when a quarterback can take a major college football player and sling him off like a gnat on a fly's ass, I mean, a fly on a gnat on a cow's ass. I mean, that was one of the most impressive plays I've ever seen a player make.
So bounce into our favorites now. Uh, we're definitely doing a little bit of chalk here on our favorites. So I'll bump to you first. I just want to throw out this stat that I have here for you before you go to your pick. Heisman favorite, preseason favorite, has not won since Marcus Mariota in 2014. So on that note, I'll transition to your pick here.
That's a hell of a segue. Thanks for that. So, like you said, Heisman favorite hasn't won since Oregon quarterback Marcus Mariota in 2015. Dylan Gabriel, Oregon quarterback, is now the Heisman favorite going into the season. What better way to break the stigma, break the tradition, than have the Oregon quarterback come into Oregon as a transfer for the third time, I think. Third time transfer.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere
And
in
win
there.
it.
Keep track
Be
of.
in New York. How the lefty quarterback hold up that Heisman in New York at the end of the season. My favorite is Dylan Gabriel. He is one of, if not the most experienced quarterback in college football right now. I think Alan Bowman is a 7th-year senior. I think he's catching a lot of flack for his social media post yesterday, talking about 19th grade.
Yeah, 19th
My
grade.
God. I mean, I can't talk a whole lot. I was a 6th-year senior, but golly. So he is one of, I think, the most experienced college football quarterbacks, players in general right now. I think he'll end the season as a top 5 passer in the history of college football, I believe. And he's coming into a program, not only with Dan Lanning as a head coach, who has built that Oregon team into a national title contender every season. He has Will Stein as his play caller, as his offensive coordinator, who took Bo Nix from Auburn and turned him into a Heisman Trophy candidate.
Yep.
The way Will Stein designs his offense, it is easy. You say easy completions. Like you look at Bo Nix, I think he was well over 70. He was like over 75% completion percentage, something insane.
Which I think is partly why it drew what's his name to Sean Payton to draft him.
Yeah. But I will say the goal of an offensive coordinator for a play caller is not to make the job as hard as possible for the quarterback. It is to get those easy completions that Bo Nix was getting slaughtered for last season. It's to get those easy completions. It's to get the ball in space to good receivers who can make a play on the ball. Right? And that's what Oregon has. They have 2 really good receivers this year. They have a really good tight end room. Right? Their offensive line has been good for the past couple of years. Right? I think Dylan Gabriel has the best shot at winning the Heisman at the end of the year.
I love it, and I saw that stat, and it caused me to pause there for a hot second. I'm not gonna lie. I do love Dylan Gabriel, as I was saying earlier. This has been an Oregon love fest, but I love them to win the Big Ten. And I think that they're deep enough to make a deep run in the playoffs as well. And he's special, and he's been good everywhere he's gone. So, yeah.
With that being said, who does Bryce Harrington have as his Heisman favorite?
I was going back and forth on this all morning. I saw the stat about Dylan Gabriel. I don't pick because I'm down on Texas. Jackson, Dart, and Ole Miss, they have a tough schedule. And that's those are your top 4. There's only one person missing out of that top 4, and that's Carson Beck. And I'm high on the Georgia Bulldogs. Carson Beck, pretty good quarterback, and he has all the weapons that he needs. And to be honest with you, I think Georgia's going to do what Georgia has done the last 5 years, and it's just roll.
Yeah. I like your Carson Beck pick. What I don't like is Heisman voters making their ballot based on the best player on the best team.
And that's mainly what this pick was about, is I think that's how they're going to do it. And that's how other than Jane Daniels and Lamar Jackson, that's usually what they do. unless the player was that special. Like I can think of like Johnny Football, or they were that, generational talent.
Yeah, they were the
Um,
most outstanding college football player
mhm.
that season, which is what the
Other-
Heisman is.
Yep.
You
Other than
know?
that, you see it goes to the best player on the best team.
Yeah.
And I think that Georgia's going to be the best team. They're the deepest team. And Carson Beck, like, come on now, it's going to be the Georgia Bulldogs. So,
Yeah. I mean, that's again, the favorites are boring to talk about because everyone picks them. I love talking about the dark horse candidates. I
yeah, I
think
mean,
I'll throw this one out there. If Ollie Gordon gets the 50 touches a game that Mike Gundy wants to give him, he might he might he might rush for 3,000 yards this year. And but I think Ollie
terrible
Gordon,
punishment he's given. He's a terrible punishment he's given.
yeah, I know, what a punishment to play Division I football and possibly win the Heisman. What a punishment.
So
But
just transitioning to the next here, another contentious topic, with another two Heisman hopefuls on their team. I'll put in quotes.
yeah,
That we definitely left off because I don't like this team at all. I think that they're going to be terrible again. Again, going against FCS royalty, Colorado and NDSU, a team that our Mr. Forbes is actually pretty comfortable with and can speak pretty highly on.
mhm.
I'll quickly get my comments out of the way and turn it over to you because no one wants to hear what I have to say about North Dakota State. But
Yeah,
um, I think that this is going to be a North Dakota State win. Colorado's O-line, they do bring in a lot of people. They have 100 total starts coming in combined. They have a new O-line coach. This is something you can speak on, but
Mhm.
it's going to take time to gel, I'm assuming.
Mhm.
And North Dakota State is not the team week one to find that. And their defense last year gave up 176 yards on the ground. That's 4.6 a carry.
Yeah.
Don't love it.
Mhm.
NDSU, their last game that they played against Pac-12, just going to lose Colorado back in Pac-12, was
Yep.
Arizona 31-28. And I don't know if many people watch that. I do remember North Dakota State had every chance to win that game. It was very much winnable. And same thing, people were kind of same talk. Now this is, different Arizona, different Colorado team. Now North Dakota State, they lost 3 linemen, 2 wide receivers, their top rusher. They returned their quarterback though, and their quarterback is damn good. I'm very impressed with him. He has lots of experience. North Dakota State. And yes, they have a new coach, but he's a returning North Dakota State. He's a former North Dakota State coach. He's going to keep that Bison tradition rolling in Fargo. On defense, they return 7 starters, including their 4 leading tacklers.
Mhm.
And most importantly, going back to their offense, they averaged 238 on the ground last year. This is a destructive running attack
Mhm.
that if you're not ready to get punched in the mouth, like, like welcome to it.
Yeah,
They are good. And frankly, like as an FCS fan, I'm very biased to the FCS. But NDSU is good, and I think people are going to learn that here coming up soon. And I know we got 2 Heisman candidates in Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. But man, this is like North Dakota State's built for these games, and you've seen them go in and win these Power 4 games before, with no issue. And
Mhm.
frankly, for a team that's lost a lot from last year, they added a bunch of transfers. They're kind of a messy program. It
Yeah,
spells disaster for me.
yeah. I think really what it comes down to is you have a team that knows how to win and a team that has yet to figure out how to win under the new coach Deion Sanders. Right?
Yep.
Obviously, Deion Sanders has won in the past. He won at Jackson State, but now it's a whole new ball game at Colorado. Right? Talking about NDSU, I've personally played against NDSU twice in my career, both in high stakes games, right? Both in playoff games. This last season, we beat NDSU in the semifinals to go to the national championship, in double overtime. Hell of a game. If you want to go watch a game, go watch that game on YouTube somewhere.
Watched it the other day again. Not gonna lie.
And then played them the previous year, in the quarters, I believe.
Yeah.
In the quarters, lost that one in Fargo. Right? NDSU is about as well coached as you can get. When you look at their on offense, they have Cam Miller back, who's their starting quarterback. He is not the guy who you're gonna go into 5 wide and let him sling the ball around, but he is the athlete at quarterback that NDSU has had for a while now. I mean, it's Carson Wentz, Easton Stick, and then Trey Lance. I mean, he's the guy that'll run the ball for you, and that's what NDSU wants to do. They want to run the ball. They want to put a couple tight ends, two fullbacks into the game, and they want to run the ball on you. And I think when you look at Colorado, they were bottom in FBS last year and
Terrible.
and rush defense. I think they were 107th. I think is what I have on my notes here. They were 107th in college football last year against the run. That's not good. And when you have a well-coached team that plays elite defense, I'm pretty sure they have 4 All-American candidates on their defense this year for FCS.
Yep.
That wants to run the ball on offense. I mean, that's a formula for success. And like you mentioned that they lost their head coach Matt Ennis to USC to be their associate head coach and linebackers coach. They bring in Tim Polasek. I'm pretty sure I still have his number on my phone because he was at Iowa when Iowa was recruiting me way back in the day. But Tim Polasek, he's an NDSU guy. I mean, NDSU has had the same mold of head coach every time they've had a transition, and they've won championships every time they've changed their head coach. We talked about Chris Kleiman earlier in the episode. He's the new head coach at Kansas State. As soon as Chris Kleiman leaves, after he has his run at NDSU, wins a few national championships, then we have Matt Entz, I believe, is who replaced him.
And even lineman, you had Craig Bowles, and he was the lead.
Craig Bull. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then you have Matt Entz, who obviously had the success that he had. I think, and Tim Polasek is in the same mold, and he wants to play elite defense. He was at Iowa for a long time. I think he was actually at Wyoming with Craig Bull.
I think so too. They just copy and paste their head coaches.
Yeah, and when you find the formula for winning, you keep that formula. And I think that is what NDSU has done over the past, 15, 20 years. However long their run has been. Now, super happy to say that the Montana Grizzlies were the one that end the Matt Entz portion of the dynasty. Super happy about that. Just wanted to throw that one in there. But I think it is absurd. I'll let you talk more about this. I think it's absurd that NDSU is a 9-point underdog in this game. There's no reason for them to be a double, a 2-score underdog in this game.
I could not agree more. And the line's been going the other way since it's been posted back in May. It was originally a touchdown fave. They're a touchdown underdog. And it's just been going back and back and back. And I can only expect next week as more, recreational bettors get on it, it's going to jump up to 10.5. And that's crazy. That's crazy talk for a team that will control the game, control the clock, run the ball. They're not going to I don't envision them letting Colorado put up points. And that's when Colorado does really well last year, is when they were putting up massive amounts of points. I don't see that happening with their ball control. And it's going to be a 1-score game. Like I thoroughly believe that at the minimum, if North Dakota State does not win, give me the 9.5, give me the 10.5. Even I was going to take the 7.5. just because I'm that confident in this Bison team, and I've seen them do it frequently against Power 4 schools.
And with all this being said, we've been talking about NDSU the entire time. I think they're going to win. I think you think they're going to win, and if they don't win, they're going to cover.
Yep.
Going from
No,
the betting side. With that being said, I don't think NDSU has seen a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders. When Shedeur Sanders is hot, he's hot. He is an electric football player. I don't care.
even
You
Travis
know, and then the NDSU probably hasn't seen a receiver like a receiver / corner like Travis Hunter, who is one of the more instinctive college football players in America right now.
Yep.
I don't think NDSU has seen the pair of guys like that, but two guys are not going to win you a football game. I think that is what NDSU is best at. We talked about a team that doesn't yet know how to win under their head coach, and a team that knows how to win. It's you playing complementary football. And I think that's what NDSU does really well. They play elite defense, and they have an elite running game. They will control the clock. They will pound on you. And then it turns into an attitude game. What is Deion Sanders and the rest of this Colorado squad? What does their attitude look like when they get into this game? And it's tight. It's tighter than they want to. Maybe they're losing. Maybe they're
Talk about a
losing.
standalone game on a Thursday before college game day on a Saturday. They're going to be in prime time in front of a national audience. Whew. It just smells like upset to me. And I know a lot of people, like, you can see where all the money's at. People are still taking Colorado. That's fine. I've seen enough from North Dakota State. I've heard enough stories from you. I've heard enough stories from, a lot of our other friends. I love the Bison here. So,
I think we can both agree on that.
yep.
Going into week 0. Week 0 this year is a little more lackluster than it has been in the past in terms of high stakes matchups. Really, the only one that really rings the dinger for some people is the Florida State Georgia Tech game that is in Dublin, Ireland this year. That it's easily the best matchup of week 0. I think Georgia Tech is an underrated ACC team with Haynes King at quarterback. They finished with a 7-6 record last year, but they got better as the season went along. Florida State has, like we mentioned earlier, had an interesting end to their season after they went undefeated. Didn't get into the college football playoff because their quarterback Jordan Travis broke his leg. Still won the ACC, got left out of the college football playoff, and then went to a bowl game and then lost by 60 because there were so many people sitting out, transfers, maybe some of the players there just weren't that interested in winning. I don't know. I hate to say that from the player part, because I just personally I would want to win that game if I was a Florida State guy. I don't want to go and say that they didn't care about that bowl game, but it's really it's pretty heartbreaking to expect to be in the college football playoff, especially after the season they had, and then have to go to a bowl game, So
then I think you saw Mike Norvell kind of wave the white flag towards the end there as well. You kind of saw his attitude change as well.
Yeah.
All great points. I also am looking forward to that game. I'm going to post to our account here pretty soon. I love the over in that game. I think it's going to be a scoring fest, and I also think Georgia Tech's going to run the ball quite a bit and score. I like you said, they're kind of underrated this year, and they got a little bit coming back. They're going to be a frisky team to watch out for. Snag a few games here or there.
What do you think about DJ Uyunglele? Dang, I am busting out these names today. I'm killing it today. What do you think about him coming into Florida State and being the guy this year?
I think it's going to be a solid pickup for Florida State. He came from an offense that ran the ball heavy last year. So his stats look wonderful. I don't really know what to expect from Florida State. They're another one with a tough schedule. They have to play Notre Dame. They have to play Clemson. I think they have Louisville as well. They're gonna have a tough road about it, or to go about it. So, I think he's a good pickup. I don't know what you're thinking about.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how he does. coming into this season. Like you said, statistically, he was better at Oregon State than in years past. I think when he left Clemson, I think there was a bad taste in the mouths of a lot of fans, and I think the coaches were ready to move on from him.
Yeah.
With Cade Klubnik coming in right behind him. So I think I'm rooting for him. I don't know him personally. Just his story is kind of the adversity that he's had to go through with everything. He just at Oregon State, it felt like he finally had a home, and then there was a coaching change, and then he felt like he had to move on after that. So
No,
all
and
right.
I could not agree more. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, so to wrap it up real quick, I'm gonna let you go into the BarnBurner Bet segment to finish this sucker off.
So I'm gonna go back and quickly, because this ties into my first barn burner bet. We got my week 0 game that I'm looking forward to is SMU versus Nevada. Preston Stone's very good, very good. And this SMU team's loaded with transfers. They've been kind of building for this moment to move finally into a Power 4 conference kind of team. And they finally got it. The ACC, kind of weird conference for them to be in.
I hate that they're in the ACC and not the Big
It
12.
should be
I
a
hate
Big
that.
12. I know, and I'm with you. But they're kind of built for this, and they got a nice schedule, which goes back to a bet that I'll talk here in a quick bit. But they're gonna play Nevada here week 0. Just selfishly reasons. Nevada just picked up Coach Jeff Choate, former linebacker coach at Texas, and now he and a former coach from Montana State. Very comfortable watching Jeff Choate. I've seen him play plenty of times. His brand of football is very punchy in the mouth, control the tempo. He's a very good program builder. He built up that Montana State team very well. That's one compliment I'll give to that school. But I'm interested in seeing how both these teams look in week 0. One for my bet for SMU, 2 just for Nevada, and seeing how, because they've had a couple rough years now. And seeing what he can do there. Also, Chuba Purdy's probably going to be their quarterback there. Interesting Purdy to be there, but whatever works. So we'll just roll into the SMU. I got SMU over 8.5 wins on the year. Why? I love the 8 returners on offense, including dynamic QB Preston Stone. They got an averages defense, but they could be a wild card in the ACC. They got a very easy schedule. Their hardest game being at home, week 5 against Florida State. Once again, like we were talking about Florida State. Florida State has a massive list of games that they, have to look forward to playing. And I think that could be an easy one that they could probably snip off. And, I like their win total right there. And I don't know what you're thinking, but
No, I agree with you. I think 8.5. I think over 8.5 is a good number for them.
perfect. We'll bump to this next one. I got Rutgers. Cue the theme music, the Italian theme music here. They're avoiding Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, and Iowa on their schedule this year. Sorry, Rutgers over 6.5. Let me say the number for you guys. Three toughest games are at Vautech. That's going to be a tough one. Vautech's kind of a dark horse again in the ACC. They I forget the quarterback's name, but they're going to be better this year. They're at Nebraska and at USC. Nebraska, I never know what to think about them. You could probably speak more. They got Dylan Raiola at quarterback. They got what's his name? I'm blanking on it right now. Their head coach.
Matt Rule.
Matt Rule. They got Matt Rule, head coach, who historically year 2, he does really well in building these programs. It's just Nebraska, and I've seen these guys lose too many 1-score games for me to trust Nebraska quite yet. So, and at USC, I guess we'll see what the travel does for Rutgers. But they got eight returning starters, and they got a great running back. I like the over 6.5. There's plenty of winnable games in there. My next one, I got Bama over 9.5. Everyone might be a little bit down on Bama this year after losing Nick Saban, huge loss. But DeBoer, he's won it everywhere that he's been. And I think it's going to be hard for me to look at that and say he's just going to drop a step down with all this talent that they have. They have an elite quarterback in Jaden Milroe. They have Georgia at home. That's a favorable game for them. They're playing at LSU off a bye. They have Oklahoma State. They're coming off a bye, and maybe Wisconsin will be a little frisky this year at Wisconsin for them. I don't see it though, and I trust that they'll be able to snag at least 10 wins, and I still think that they're a pretty good team overall.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see the win total for Alabama be at 9.5. It's just so different than what it has been in years past. Obviously, when you have probably the greatest football coach of all time in college and Nick Saban leaving, yeah, that probably adds some differences.
Yeah.
But I think Kalen DeBoer took perhaps the hardest college jump of all time, following up the all-time great.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird seeing the 9.5 for Alabama, but I agree with you. I think I trust that Kalen DeBoer and Jalen Milroe are going to be just fine. I think that defense is still going to be an Alabama defense, and that Georgia at home is going to be a good litmus test for this team and how they do. The Okie State game.
Sorry, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma is going to be That'll be interesting. LSU off a bye is going to be really interesting. I say if Alabama gets 10 wins this year, it's a win for them and it's a win for Kalen DeBoer.
I just see a man that took like a Michael Penix style offense. He'll probably be bringing that with him with Jaden Milroe, and Jaden Milroe is way better than Michael Penix, I think. And like they got the weapons. I love it.
Jalen Milroe adds the extra dimension on the ground.
Yep.
As well. Michael Penix was a better than average runner of the football, but that's not what his thing was. I mean, he threw for 4,000 yards. He was a Heisman candidate last year. Yep. And I think that's where really good coaches come into play, is you put your players in the best position to be successful. And I think Kalen DeBoer has proven that he is a winner at every level that he's been at. And when you give him a guy like Jalen Milroe, a quarterback, it makes it a hell of a lot easier.
There could be worse jobs that he could be stepping into. So my next one, I got Appalachian State over 8.5. This will be a sweated out bet. They got some tough games: Liberty, Clemson, East Carolina, and JMU at the end of the year. They got 11 starters returning, including their QB from last year. They're a definite contender for the Fun Belt. Let me clarify. Next to JMU for Sun Belt champs. And they got a somewhat easy schedule in the Fun Belt. I know a lot of people are picking like the sexy pick out of the Fun Belt right now is Texas State because they stole McLeod from JMU. I don't see it with Texas State. They're going to be good, but I think that it's going to come down to JMU and App State in that week. I think it's week 11 or week 10 matchup. Kind of deciding that winner there is going to decide who's winning the Fun Belt, because the Fun Belt still does the divisions. So
yeah,
I think whoever wins that game is going to win the Fun Belt there. And then my last one, I love this play. I couldn't get enough of it. And now with the 12-team playoff, it's even better. You can kind of snipe a few teams here or there. Utah plus 220 to make the playoffs. Might not be a great Big 12 championship bet, but hammer them to make the playoffs. They have to play Okie State.
They have done nothing but win.
They've done nothing but win. They have to play at Okie State and at UCF. They have a very manageable schedule. Cam Rising's returning for his 1,000,000th year in school. And they have a solid defense. I can see it already in my head that they're going to have a home game in Salt Lake City. Without a doubt.
The fact that I guess when you look at it, if it's a plus 200 something for them to make the playoff, yeah, that's a pretty easy bet. I don't sports bet. That's an easy bet.
I can see it, like, if they don't win the Big 12, it'll be because they stumble against like an Okie State,
Yes, yes.
or UCF at the
Yep.
balance house at the end of the year. That would be the
Yep.
two games that I'm concerned about. But
Yep.
other than that, like, I can see it already in my head. It's going to be in Salt Lake, and someone's going to have to come to Salt Lake, and it's going to be miserable for them because they play defense. They finally have a quarterback. They were competitive last year, and they had a decent to terrible quarterback, depending on the week. So love that play. Just, yeah, could not speak highly enough of that one. So, and then moving into our week 0/week 1 bets. I already alluded to this earlier. Florida State over Georgia Tech over 55.5. I think there's going to be a lot of points here. I really do. I think Florida State's going to put up points with Mike Norvell and DJ, an experienced quarterback. If there's a younger quarterback, I'd be a little bit concerned about betting the over in a week 1 game in Ireland. Not as much with two experienced quarterbacks. Kind of strange to have a conference game in Ireland to start the year. That's weird. And I might take the -11. I think Florida State's good, but I don't know. I really like Georgia Tech as a frisky team this year. And then I haven't dove completely into that week 1 schedule yet, and we'll work on getting some more info next week for you. But week 1 bets that I already like, we already talked about it. It's going to be a best bet for me already. NDSU plus 9.5. I think they're going to bump it up to 10.5. I'm going to take it at 10.5. I'm going to take it at 9.5. Like, love it. And I might sprinkle a little bit of the money line in there just for fun. I think they're going to be competitive. And then kind of a weird one. Hawaii plays Delaware State this week. Didn't even know they were an FCS school. They are going, and then next week they have UCLA at home. UCLA is, I think, abysmal this year. Not high on them at all. They're gonna go, I think they go Hawaii, then LSU, or they got like Hawaii home game at LSU. It's a mess. I'm taking Hawaii plus 13.5. I bet you by then, if it's not a great line to take it at plus 13.5, because you'd rather have the plus 14.5 so you don't get the hook with the 2 touchdown spread. But I would consider Hawaii winning this game. So
I mean, if UCLA, if their season, I mean, if their head coach's Big Ten Media Day press conference is any indication of how their season is going to go this year, yeah,
that was a terrible press conference. I think it was funny. The betting markets, I think they were at 6.5, maybe. They saw that press conference, and I think it's down to 4.5, and it just keeps skyrocketing. It's like just bad. Highly enough about this Hawaii bet. I have more over/under bets if people want to reach out. As always, bet responsibly. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this college football season. Getting AJ into the fold, able to talk, a little bit more sports betting with AJ. So
yeah, I think it's gonna be a really fun college football season. The goal is for us to be on every week. I'm putting this out into the universe so we can be consistent during this fall. The goal is to have an episode out each week. We'll have some talking points about the college football season, what the games look like the upcoming week, what they look like the previous week, and we're just gonna have fun with it. So again,
love it.
And obviously Bryce and possibly Noah are gonna be in the fold talking about BarnBurner Bets, building that up. Those guys do a great job for me. I am not a sports bettor, nor do I claim to be any good at it. Obviously,
Tough for me to claim myself as one someday.
But Bryce and Noah do a great job with BarnBurner Bets. So, and we'll obviously link that in the description on this video. So, love you guys. It's going to be a great college football season. We'll see you next week.
See ya.